Good evening, y'all. It's Peter Barclay here, host of True North Sports Talk podcast. Welcome back to the show. We are here with another beautiful episode for you this evening. Got my cup. Hope you have yours. Let's sit back and enjoy what we have left of our Labor Day weekend here. And speaking of Labor Day weekend up here in Canada, that means CFL football. I remember as a kid having 4 channels. I mean, look how far we've come in the last 20, 30 years. And Labor Day weekend on CBC, that was the start of the CFL season on their station. And so that meant that just before school, we would get the Labor Day Classic and then roll right through to the end of the Grey Cup. Now, these days, we can watch the whole season starting around July 1st, but this is Labor Day weekend, and for us up here in Canada, that means one thing, the Labor Day Classic. And depending on where you're geographically located, that means something different. Now, for me, I could have gone either way. Where I grew up, you could either go the Hamilton Tiger Cats or the Toronto Argonauts. Maybe you grew up out west and you had Calgary or Edmonton. Or maybe you were somewhere in the middle and you had either Winnipeg or Saskatchewan. So geographically, this weekend means something different for everyone. But the one thing we all have in common is they call it the Classic because you're going to get barn burners of a football game. They're going to be hard-fought matches. They're grudge matches. There's players that have played on both sides of some of these matchups. And so, yeah, it's just something to get excited about. As I mentioned, we've got the iconic Hamilton Tiger Cats versus Toronto Argonauts matchup happening. That's the early game tomorrow starting at 2:30 Eastern time. So if you're a fan of one of those teams, make sure you catch that. And we're also going to catch up on what's been a wild season so far. You have the late game tomorrow being Calgary-Edmonton, and later on today, or even shortly, you're going to have Winnipeg-Saskatchewan. So we're going to catch you up on the season so far. I know we haven't done a whole lot of episodes because the Blue Jays have had a lot going on. There's been NBA draft, NHL draft. There's been all kinds of things going on. And so today we're going to dive deep into a breakdown of not only the Classic, but the season entirely up to date. We're going to do some comparisons between the CFL and the NFL because the NFL is starting to get underway. As you've noticed, we've been at least on our shorts each time whenever there's NFL football. We've been catching you up on the scores. And we're going to talk more about it as that season gets underway and as each week goes by. So, we're talking about the tradition that has gone on. I've actually attended one of these Labor Day Classics. That was an awesome birthday present that year. It was just cool to be a part of the atmosphere, the game, the playing, all of that stuff. So we're going to talk the biggest storylines that people are buzzing about online. And in order to start this, we're going to start with the tradition itself in the Labor Day Classic. It isn't just one game. It's actually a weekend-long celebration of Canadian football. And it is the CFL's crown jewel. It's the only thing bigger is the Grey Cup. And so tomorrow's Hamilton-Toronto showdown, this rivalry actually dates back to 1949. We're looking at the 54th chapter of this iconic matchup. And what makes this game special? It's not just the tradition, it is the timing. Labor Day weekend marks the unofficial start of the CFL playoff push. Teams are either solidifying their positions, maybe they're making their last-ditch desperate attempt to stay relevant or alive. That's kind of the Argos this year. Right now, Hamilton sits at the top of the East Division with a 6-4 record, and Toronto is, as I said, super struggling at 3-8. But this is the thing about Labor Day Classics. The records go out the window. The intensity, the crowd, the intensity of the crowd, the history, all creates an atmosphere where anything can happen. Hamilton is hosting at Tim Hortons Field, as they usually do. If you've ever been to a Ticats game on Labor Day, I have. If you've never been, but I have, you are definitely missing out. The tailgating starts early. The crowd is definitely electric. There's just something about Canadian football on a holiday Monday, and it just hits way differently. Having experienced it, that is so true. The Calgary-Edmonton rivalry used to be the Labor Day headline, with Calgary hosting Edmonton almost every year since 1982. The Battle of Alberta was legendary. Over the years, the focus has shifted a little bit more to the Hamilton-Toronto matchup, and in recent years as the marquee game of the Labor Day Classic. And that's kind of happened more as it shifted fully to TSN. What should we watch out for tomorrow? Well, Hamilton needs this win to maintain their division lead and playoff positioning. Toronto, they're essentially playing for their season. At 3-8, they have to start winning and have to pick up their socks, or their playoffs are just out the window. And from a Grey Cup contender and champion last year, that's a pretty far fall for that team. And not just last year, but from the last 3-4 years. So to get caught up on the season, this one's been unpredictable as far as CFL seasons in recent memory goes. We're going to talk about the Eastern Division, starting with Hamilton at 6-4. That tells you everything you need to know about how competitive this division is. You got the Montreal Alouettes right behind them at 5-6. You have Toronto at 3-8 and Ottawa also at 3-8. As the recent standings, or the most latest standings, are showing. And Hamilton's success this year has been built around, I would say, like their defense. Their offense has been clicking. They have an impressive just way that they've been managed. They're consistent within the division, where every other team, they've had major ups and downs. There's been lack of consistency. Montreal started strong with a consistent game plan each and every week, but the Alouettes have that championship experience from a recent Grey Cup, so they're never out of it, but they need to find that consistency they had from a couple years ago. Toronto and Ottawa are in extremely tough spots, as we've mentioned. The Argonauts have the talent, but they haven't been able to put together the consistency. Now, part of me wonders, I know it's a team game, but part of me wonders how much Chad Kelly's absence has caused the Argonauts' inconsistent play. Ottawa is in year 2 of their rebuild, and while there are positive signs, wins have been pretty hard to come by for this Ottawa team. Now, switching over to the Western Division, the West is where everything gets really interesting. So based on typical CFL patterns, we've likely got Saskatchewan, Calgary, and potentially BC. Winnipeg's kind of in that mix, and they're all in various states of playoff contention. The Rough Riders started the season at home against Ottawa back in June, and Saskatchewan typically does well at home. that fan base there at Mosaic Stadium is pretty hard to match. Doesn't matter what sport you go to. 33,000 people in green, white, and black. The atmosphere is just electric. Visiting teams find it difficult to hear play calling, and just that's a really difficult atmosphere. Calgary has been dealing with transitions, but the Stampeders organization, they just seem to know how to win. They've been competitive in the West. They flirted with first place at times, and their Labor Day hosting duties against Edmonton over the years has created one of the CFL's best and most storied rivalries. BC and Winnipeg are both teams that can get hot at the right time. The Blue Bombers have championship DNA from them going to like 4 straight Grey Cups. And so they've had success, and BC is always a wild card with explosive potential, especially at quarterback. So some key storylines from the year to get you caught up. Quarterback play, as we just mentioned. This has been a year of quarterback changes, adjustments across the league when it comes to that. There's been a lot of parity or equality across the league this year. The fact that Hamilton leads the East at only 6-4 shows how tight everything is. We've got the playoff race coming up, as we mentioned, the season running until October 25th. We're in that crucial part where every single game matters. Now, as fans of the CFL, what are CFL fans actually talking about? Because there are some interesting trends happening. There's the CFL playoff picture. That's probably the biggest trend or the biggest thing that fans are focused on right now. As we mentioned, the Labor Day Classic kind of kicks off that playoff push. People want to know who's making the playoffs, who's in the scenarios, what are the likely outcomes. And the reality is, in the East, Hamilton is in the driver's seat, but they're not guaranteed anything. If Montreal, they get hot and take off, if Toronto can get themselves together, they're not mathematically eliminated yet, though they kind of need to win out in order to make it. The West is always more competitive, it seems. This year is no different. The West playoff race could come down to the final week. Kind of reminds me of the AL East division in baseball, and some CFL versus NFL differences. This is always a spike during the CFL season, especially around Labor Day. That's when American football fans are starting to get back into football mode. And the 3 downs, wider field, larger end zones. There's more scoring at times. So these differences make the CFL a unique product. The pace of the game is faster with less downs. There's more passing. There's more explosive plays at times. And it's a bit more of a chess match based on the fact that there's less space or plays, as it were, in order to create and move and all that kind of stuff. It creates a constant pressure. Something else to look at is CFL attendance this year. This is a topic that every year where CFL comes up, it's one of those things where the CFL, as a smaller league, needs to keep its attendance up. Hamilton's Labor Day Classic typically sells out, but league-wide attendance, it varies by market. Saskatchewan always packs out Mosaic Stadium. Calgary and Edmonton usually get good support, especially if they're playing well. And Toronto and Ottawa, for whatever reason, maybe it's other pro sports available, but they've always struggled to consistently draw fans. The league's health often gets measured by attendance, and so it's always a discussion point. We can look at some Grey Cup ideas for this year. It's early, but people are already looking ahead. This is the 112th Grey Cup this year, and it's set for November. And while it's kind of too early to make any concrete predictions, it's looking like for those of us on the East Coast, we'll be cheering for Hamilton in the Grey Cup, and I would suggest Saskatchewan in the West. Fantasy football with CFL has grown significantly. With shorter seasons, it creates more of an urgency for fantasy decisions, and the wide open passing game creates huge fantasy numbers. Labor Day games are always crucial for fantasy playoffs in CFL leagues, and the CFL salary cap versus the NFL. This comes up a lot when people compare the leagues. The CFL's salary cap creates a different dynamic. Teams can't just go out and buy championships. Roster turnover can be significant year to year, and players in the CFL do get paid significantly less based on league revenue. So, what should we watch for tomorrow in the Hamilton-Toronto showdown? From Hamilton's perspective, they're at a home game. They lead the division. At the moment, they have momentum. So this game, from their point of view, is theirs to lose. They need to establish their running game early and control the line of scrimmage. And they can also feed off the Oscar Wee-Wees at Tim Hortons Field. And that crowd energy is going to be crucial. From Toronto's perspective, it's desperate times call for desperate measures. The Argos are playing with their backs against the wall, and sometimes that's when teams can be the most dangerous. They have nothing to lose. They got everything to gain. Look for them to be taking more downfield long bomb risks. They may go for it on third down a little more often. They try to create bigger plays possibly. And the key matchups for this game will be the line of scrimmage battle between the big boys up front, both on defense and offense. Special teams could make up the difference. Field position is always a huge thing in the CFL. Depending on the weather, if it's windy, rainy, especially today in Saskatchewan, the crowd noise, the Labor Day atmosphere, that's going to all play a part. Predictions, I'm not big on those, but it doesn't look good for Toronto. They haven't played well against Hamilton this year. Unless Toronto plays inspired football for 4 quarters. I think Hamilton's depth, their home field advantage, I think it leans toward a Hamilton victory, but it's hard to say. And so after Labor Day, we have about 8 weeks left in the regular season. So here's what we're going to be watching for. September is a crucial time. Teams that get hot in September can and often do carry that momentum into the playoffs. In October, you're into the final month of the season, and that is where legends can be made or broken. And the weather starts to become a factor, especially out west, as they tend to get colder and snowier a little quicker than it does in eastern Canada. We're looking at fourth place teams that have higher records. There's crossover potential. Third place teams from other divisions, if its record is higher. We got the Grey Cup race. I don't know how wide open it really feels with Hamilton and Saskatchewan playing the way they are. But it is wide open. It is the CFL. And that experience in the championship matters more than just having success in the regular season. So, that's our complete Labor Day Classic and CFL season update. Don't forget that tomorrow between Hamilton and Toronto, that game kicks off at 2:30, and it's available on TSN for those of you up here in Canada. If you're in the Hamilton area, if you can get down to that game, or if you're going to that game, it's going to be an incredible atmosphere. And the 2025 season, as we expected, has been pretty unpredictable. It's been pretty open, entertaining, and everything you'd want for a CFL season. Now, the Calgary-Edmonton game for tomorrow, that is going to be potentially a tighter game than the one in Toronto with Hamilton. The teams are a little bit closer together. Edmonton seems to have their team on a little bit of a better trajectory than the last few years. They've been the most dismal team in the CFL for like the last, 5, 6, maybe even more years. They've had a few more wins than expected this year. And so that's going to be another hard-fought game. In Calgary, they usually sell out for the Labor Day game, and that can be an amazing atmosphere, just like it is in Hamilton. Let's not sleep on that game. That game starts at 6:30, I believe, in the Eastern time zone. And make no mistake that there is some upset potential from that game, just like there is in the East. I know we haven't talked a whole lot about that Calgary-Edmonton game, but let's make no mistake. As a kid, when I was growing up, that was actually the game I looked most forward to. If I missed the Toronto-Hamilton matchup, that never bothered me so much, just simply because the atmosphere and the game and just everything about that Calgary-Edmonton matchup, that was what I looked for as a youngster. Now, back in those days, you had Doug Flutie, you had Danny McManus, you had Darren Flutie, Alan Pitts, like the list goes on and on of the guys that you love to see. Gizmo Williams, let's not forget him, because every time he returned either a kickoff, a punt, whatever it was, he was always electric. So there were guys on both sides of that football that were just so much fun to watch, and we always looked forward to and ran through our dinner to get to that game. So let's see how it turns out. I'm not one for predictions, but this year at least in Calgary, Edmonton, or for the last few years at least, it definitely tends to lean more towards Calgary. Dave Dickinson has a real good thing building there, and let's see how they can keep it going. So we're going to dive, or not necessarily dive deeper, but we'll talk more about these Labor Day Classic games, definitely on Monday night in your 3-minute drill. Potentially we'll talk about them again on Tuesday, depending on how things go. Let's keep the True North Sports Talk going with the hashtag True North Sports Talk. Let's keep supporting our league up here in Canada. The CFL needs all the support it can get. Hopefully you enjoyed the breakdown for tomorrow's Labor Day Classic. Hopefully you're caught up with everything you need to know about the league this year. If there's anything we missed or anything you want to hear about the CFL, let us know in the comments. And so for today, that is our episode. Don't forget to enjoy those games, either the one this afternoon or tomorrow. Enjoy your Labor Day Classic. Remember, 2:30 start time for the East Coast teams, and I believe a 6:30 start or a 4:30 start. Actually, you know what? Let me just go and definitely check that out for you guys. I don't want to give you wrong information. So it says 2:30 and 6 o'clock. Now, remember, they probably have a half-hour pregame on that, but you don't want to miss those games. And then next week, it's the home and home. So you get the Toronto, they've changed it a little bit. Next week they are playing Montreal Hamilton instead of Toronto Hamilton. That's odd. That's a new wrinkle for this year. But yeah, so check out the return matches for next week. And yeah, enjoy you some CFL football. I know I'll be watching tomorrow, and it'll be fun to see what the outcome is. So, for True North Sports Talk Podcast, I'm Peter Barclay, signing off. We'll see you next week.